Have you ever wondered why the most sensitive people in your life always seem to carry the heaviest burdens? Why the ones who feel everyone else's pain so deeply are the very people who end up exhausted, anxious, and broken? We call them empaths, the emotional sponges, the ones who enter a room and instantly absorb the moods of strangers. They can feel the sorrow of someone they've never spoken to. They can carry the rage of a person they will never meet again. For centuries, society has told empaths that this is a spiritual gift, a sacred calling. You were born to heal, they've been told. Your sensitivity is your superpower. And so, empaths try to live up to this identity. They take on the pain of their families, their partners, their communities, sometimes even entire cultures. But what if everything you've been told about being an empath is wrong? What if Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human psyche, revealed a truth that turns the popular narrative upside down? Jung believed that empaths were never born to heal, not in the way people assume, not by sacrificing themselves to carry the shadows of the world. Instead, Jung saw empaths as something far more radical, living mirrors of the unconscious, carriers of humanity's hidden shadow, the secret darkness we all project but refuse to face. This changes everything, because when an empath mistakes this role for a divine mission to heal, they become trapped. They allow themselves to be drained, broken, consumed. They confuse endless sacrifice with love. They confuse absorption with healing. And in doing so, they lose the very self that could transform this sensitivity into strength. Think about your own life. Have you ever walked into a room and felt your mood collapse without knowing why? Someone's anxiety begins to pound inside your chest. A stranger's grief rests heavy in your throat. Their anger sharpens your nerves until your hands shake. You didn't choose it. You didn't consent to it. It just happens. By the time you leave, you feel like you've lived 10 different lives in one body. This is what Jung would call psychological porousness, a nervous system with no filter, a psyche so open that it becomes the perfect screen for projection. Empaths don't simply pick up vibes. They become containers for other people's unconscious material. And here lies the devastating truth. Much of what you are carrying was never yours to bear. The exhaustion that doesn't fade, the depression that creeps in without warning, the panic attacks that come from nowhere. These may not even belong to you. They are fragments of the collective unconscious, pouring into you through invisible channels. You're not weak. You're not broken. You are drowning in an ocean that was never meant to be carried inside a single soul. Carl Jung mapped this terrain of the psyche in detail. He discovered that human beings survive by projecting the parts of themselves they cannot face, their rage, their envy, their shame, their fear. Instead of owning these shadows, they cast them onto others, and empaths with their permeable boundaries become the easiest targets. You are not just feeling sadness. You are feeling the sadness your mother could not face, the rage your partner disowns, the despair society hides beneath its obsession with productivity and success, and the tragedy is that empaths often mistake this absorption for a higher calling. They believe, if I take this pain on myself, maybe I will heal the world. But Jung warned, this is not healing. This is entrapment, because true healing does not come from carrying someone else's shadow. It comes from reflecting it back. It comes from becoming a mirror so clear, so conscious, that those around you are forced to see what they've denied. This is why empaths were never born to heal in the way society tells them. They were born to reveal, to reflect, to illuminate. And this is dangerous, because when an empath stops being a silent sponge and starts becoming a conscious mirror, they terrify the people who once exploited their sensitivity. The narcissist, who used to pour all his shame into the empath, now sees his own darkness staring back at him. The manipulator, who relied on the empath's compliance, now faces resistance. Jung called this process individuation, the painful journey of becoming whole, of reclaiming every lost fragment of your psyche. For empaths, individuation means no longer being the dumping ground for others' shadows. It means reclaiming your boundaries, discovering that your sensitivity is not a curse to be endured, but a power to be harnessed. Right now, in this age of collective anxiety and narcissistic rage, empaths are drowning faster than ever before. But Jung's insight offers a lifeline. Your suffering is not meaningless. It is a signal, a calling to awaken. Empaths were never born to heal others by carrying their wounds. They were born to confront the collective shadow, to hold a mirror so sharp that humanity has no choice but to see itself. And in that reflection lies the beginning of true transformation. You've felt it, haven't you? The heaviness in your chest that doesn't belong to you, the sudden wave of despair that appears out of nowhere. This is not just your story. It's repression that spans generations. Carl Jung's model of the psyche shows that empaths unconsciously mirror these hidden aspects of humanity, making the invisible visible through their own suffering. And this is why shadow work often feels impossible for empaths. Because you're not just sorting through your own wounds, you're sorting through shadows that aren't even yours. The unconscious mind cannot differentiate between authentic personal material and the collective darkness you've absorbed. And so you drown in emotions you never created. Jung warned us, without conscious awareness, sensitive individuals become psychic garbage bins for the disowned traits of their environment. You've been carrying grief that was never yours, rage that wasn't born inside you, shame that belonged to an entire culture, not your own soul. But here's the pivot point. Understanding this changes everything. Once you recognize that you are reflecting the shadow, not generating it, you can begin the real work. And this is where you need to lean in. Because what I'm about to tell you reframes your suffering in a way that could alter the course of your life. What if your so-called curse is actually humanity's desperate attempt to see itself? Think about it. When the empath breaks down from absorbing too much, the world is forced to ask, what have we done? Your collapse becomes a mirror. Your pain becomes a message. This is exactly why narcissists are drawn to empaths like heat-seeking missiles. The shadow you've been absorbing has a name, a face, and a mask: the narcissist. Their grandiose persona hides a shame core so deep it could swallow them alive. They cannot bear to feel it, so they find you. And here is where Jung's research exposes the cruelest bond of all, the toxic dance between empaths and narcissists. You see, it's not random attraction, it's mutual projection. The narcissist projects their vulnerability, their terror of being seen, their repressed humanity, directly into the empath's porous psyche. Meanwhile, the empath unconsciously projects their own golden shadow, their hidden strength, confidence, and self-worth, onto the narcissist's glittering mask. It is the perfect storm of psychological manipulation. At first it looks like love, intensity, passion, destiny. But slowly, the gaslighting begins. You're too sensitive. You're imagining things. You're crazy. These words are not careless insults. They are weapons meticulously crafted to weaken the very boundaries that were fragile to begin with. The narcissist engages in what can only be described as emotional vampirism, feeding on the empath's life force while maintaining the illusion of superiority. And here's the devastating truth that almost no one will tell you. Narcissism cannot exist without the empath's mirror. Every outburst of rage, every cruel projection, every moment of devaluation is nothing but the narcissist's terror of confronting their own shadow. They need you to carry it for them. The empath becomes a psychic channeling system, a living drain pipe for everything the narcissist refuses to feel. This is why so many sensitive souls spend years, even decades, trapped in trauma bonds, convinced they can fix the narcissist, heal them, save them. But here is the truth you must remember, and it may be the hardest truth of all. You cannot heal someone who uses your compassion as a weapon against you. And here's where the story turns. Because when the empath begins to awaken, when they sense that they might stop being the convenient container for someone else's shame, the narcissist escalates. The manipulation grows more violent. The gaslighting more vicious. Because your awakening threatens the entire fragile ecosystem of their false self. So what happens next? What could possibly free you from a cycle this powerful? The answer is betrayal. It sounds strange, doesn't it? betrayal as salvation. But Jung understood it deeply. The only way out begins with a shattering so profound, it destroys every illusion you ever had about love, loyalty, and who you thought they were. And in that destruction, something extraordinary begins. Jung called it individuation, the death of the victim, and the birth of the sovereign self. When the narcissist's mask finally falls, it feels like the end of your world. But Jung insisted, it is not destruction, it is the first stage of psychological alchemy. Think of the ancient alchemists who turned lead into gold. They began with what they called prima materia, raw chaotic material. For empaths, that prima materia is your suffering. Every sleepless night, every panic attack, every betrayal you thought would kill you, this is the raw substance of transformation. The process is not mystical, it is deeply human. You are transmuting pain into wisdom, turning trauma into sovereignty. The overwhelming emotions that once drowned you are now the catalyst for building unbreakable boundaries. And now you see why this is more important than anything we've discussed so far. Because this is the moment your story changes. This is where the empath stops being the victim and begins becoming the mirror, conscious, sharp, and terrifying to those who once exploited them. But the question is, will you survive the fire long enough to be reborn? When one person integrates their shadow, it doesn't just liberate their own psyche, it stirs something vast within the collective unconscious. Jung observed this across myth, religion, and folklore. The transformation of the individual sends shockwaves through humanity's deepest layers, awakening dormant patterns that have been waiting for recognition. And this is the dangerous truth. One sovereign empath is never just one person. They are a mirror multiplied. Like a stone dropped into still waters, their presence ripples outward, breaking illusions far beyond what the eye can see. Think about it. Every family has secrets no one dares to speak. Every community carries invisible rules of silence. Every culture hides collective shadows in order to maintain order. But when a single empath awakens and refuses to absorb these projections anymore, they become a disruptor. Suddenly what was hidden demands to be seen. And here's where the story turns from personal to universal. Because the empath's individuation doesn't simply free them from the narcissist or from the weight of other people's emotions. It destabilizes entire systems built on denial. Families, institutions, relationships, cultures. This is why awakened empaths are feared. They don't conform to the old role of self-sacrificing healer. They no longer play the savior, the martyr, the endless sponge. Instead, they embody something far more radical, truth in its rawest form. Now pause for a moment. Imagine what that means for you. Up until now, you may have believed your sensitivity was a curse, a weakness, even a burden. But now you begin to see the very trait that once crushed you is also the force that can crack open collective illusions. This isn't just about surviving anymore. This is about transforming the way humanity sees itself. And you might be thinking, that sounds overwhelming. After all, who am I to carry such a task? But here's what Jung would remind you. Individuation is never about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming whole. When you stop mistaking absorption for love, when you stop confusing self-erasure with healing, you discover the quiet authority of sovereignty. This sovereignty doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply radiates. When you enter a room as an integrated empath, your very presence functions like a tuning fork, vibrating at the frequency of truth. Others feel it before they understand it. Masks begin to slip. False personas weaken. Because unconsciousness cannot remain intact in the presence of someone who has faced their own shadow and lived to tell the tale. This is why narcissists retreat. Why manipulators lash out. Why energy vampires suddenly feel uncomfortable. It's not that you have become cruel. It's that their projections no longer stick. For the first time, they must face themselves without a container to dump into. And here's where the story expands even further. Because when mirrors multiply, when more empaths awaken and integrate, something extraordinary happens in the collective field. Jung predicted that humanity evolves through symbols, archetypes, and shared patterns. He noticed that when individuals begin to live out deep archetypal transformations, entire societies shift. So what does that mean for us now? It means every empath who stops being a victim and starts becoming sovereign contributes to a wider awakening. Like sparks catching across dry wood, one transformation ignites another. Your boundaries teach others to set their own. Your truth-telling makes lies harder to maintain. Your refusal to absorb forces others to finally do their own shadow work. And here's what you need to hear most right now. This is not mysticism. It's not fantasy. It's psychology at scale. Rupert Sheldrake later described it as morphic resonance, patterns of consciousness that spread through invisible fields. But Jung had already seen it. When one person individuates, they activate something in the collective. Now consider this carefully. If you felt broken, if you believed your suffering was meaningless, Jung would say this: your suffering was never random. Every projection you carried, every narcissistic bond you endured, every collapse you survived, all of it was preparing you for this transformation. Pain was not the end of your story. It was the prima materia, the raw material for your alchemy. This is why, as Jung insisted, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. For the empath, that truth is magnified, but once you cross through it, your sensitivity is reborn as something else entirely: integrated power. Let's bring this down to the lived moment. Imagine you, an empath who once dissolved in every storm, now walking into a room. The tension is there, the anger, the grief, the denial. But instead of drowning in it, you feel it move around you like waves breaking on a rock. You witness, but you do not merge. You see, but you do not absorb. And because of that, others are forced to finally feel what was theirs all along. Do you see the shift? This is no longer compassion as self-erasure. This is compassion as sovereign choice. This is empathy with boundaries sharp enough to cut through illusion. And it's here where something almost mystical happens, but not in the way you might expect. The awakened empath becomes a carrier of truth, not because they preach it, but because they embody it. They demonstrate that real connection requires two whole beings, not one whole and one collapsing. They show that love without boundaries is not love at all, but addiction disguised as sacrifice. And here's the part that most people are not ready to hear. When enough empaths awaken, the systems built on projection, families that hide abuse, cultures that scapegoat, relationships that manipulate, cannot sustain themselves. Illusions rot in the presence of truth. That's why this path is so dangerous. That's why sovereign empaths are feared. But let's return to you. Because by now you understand something vital. You were never born to heal others by carrying their wounds. That was the lie that kept you small, compliant, and broken. What you were born for is infinitely more powerful. You were born to hold up a mirror, to embody the possibility of wholeness, to live as proof that sensitivity is not fragility, but the foundation of sovereign power. And if you followed me this far, then you already feel it. This is more than an idea. It's an invitation. The world doesn't need more wounded healers absorbing everyone else's pain. The world needs sovereign empaths who refuse to play the victim, who transmute their curse into authority, and who show others that facing the shadow is the only path to freedom. Because when mirrors multiply, change becomes unstoppable. So the question is no longer whether you were born to heal. The real question is, will you awaken to the power you've carried all along? Now that you've seen how individuation transforms an empath from a victim into a sovereign mirror, you need to understand something even more profound. This story has been told before, not just in psychology, but in myth, legend, and archetype. Because Jung believed that our personal struggles are never just personal. They echo universal patterns etched deep into the collective unconscious. Every empath's journey, from absorption to betrayal to transformation, mirrors some of humanity's oldest stories. Take, for instance, the myth of Persephone. She was taken into the underworld, consumed by a darkness she did not choose. At first she was a victim, but her time below became the seed of transformation. She returned not just as a girl who had been taken, but as a queen of both worlds, sovereign over life and death. Doesn't this sound familiar? The empath dragged into shadow, broken by unbearable emotions, who returns as someone who can move between worlds without being destroyed. Or think of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess who descended into the depths. Stripped of every power, every symbol of identity, she was hung on a hook in the underworld, lifeless. And yet she rose again, but she rose different, stronger, integrated. Her descent was not punishment, it was initiation. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The gold is in the dark." The empath's curse, the unbearable absorption of others' pain, is not random cruelty, it is initiation. Every projection you carried, every collapse you survived, was the underworld tearing away false layers. And here's the revelation you cannot ignore: your suffering was not meant to destroy you, it was meant to transform you. Now, why is this so important? Because if you don't understand the archetypal nature of your pain, you'll keep seeing it as personal failure. You'll think, "I'm too sensitive, I'm broken, I can't function like everyone else." But if you see your suffering as initiation, everything changes. You realize, I was never weak, I was being prepared. And let's be honest, empaths need this shift more than anyone. Because the lie of weakness has been hammered into you since childhood. Stop crying. You're too sensitive. You need to toughen up. But Jung would say sensitivity is not fragility, it is raw material. What matters is whether it remains unconscious absorption or whether it becomes conscious power. Now that you see this, the next revelation is even more important. Because the empath's transformation does not end with their own individuation. Once you've integrated your shadow and reclaimed your sovereignty, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start shaping the collective field around you. Let me explain. When you refuse to carry projections, you force others to confront their own. At first they resist. They may rage, manipulate, or abandon you. But over time something shifts. Your boundaries act like a mirror. They cannot escape. And slowly they begin to face what they once denied. This is how one sovereign empath becomes the catalyst for a wider awakening. Jung saw this as the ripple effect of individuation. When one person becomes whole, they unconsciously invite wholeness in others. It doesn't mean you save them. It means your presence destabilizes their illusions until they have no choice but to face themselves. And this brings us to the most dangerous truth of all. Awakened empaths threaten every system built on denial. Think about families where abuse was hidden for generations. The empath who awakens refuses to play the role of silent scapegoat. Suddenly the unspoken rules shatter, or consider workplaces built on exploitation. The sovereign empath will not absorb toxic projections anymore. Their refusal forces the truth into the open. Or societies that survive by casting entire groups as shadows, scapegoats, outsiders, enemies. An awakened empath exposes the lie by embodying what cannot be denied. Humanity reflected back without distortion. Now you understand why this matters so much. Because your transformation is not just for you, it is for all of us. But here's the paradox. You cannot do it for others. The moment you slip back into the role of savior, you lose the sovereignty that makes you powerful. Healing happens by example, not by absorption. By embodying your wholeness, you make wholeness possible for others. This is why narcissists fear the awakened empath. Why manipulators recoil. Why entire systems tremble when enough sensitive souls reclaim their power. It's not because you attack, it's because you embody a truth that cannot be denied. And here's where you need to lean in, because this may be the hardest part to accept. Once you awaken, you will lose people. You will be rejected. Not because you are wrong, but because your very existence mirrors truths others cannot face yet. Jung warned that individuation is lonely, because few are willing to endure the fire of transformation. But he also promised that on the other side of that loneliness is authentic connection, the kind of intimacy only possible between whole beings. So yes, the path is painful. But ask yourself, isn't the old life more painful? Absorbing everyone else's shadows until you collapse. Living as a dumping ground for pain that was never yours. Your suffering was the initiation. Your awakening is the reward. And once you see this clearly, you'll realize something stunning. You were never born to heal others by carrying their wounds. You were born to demonstrate what healing looks like when someone takes responsibility for their own shadow. That is the empath's true role. Not savior, not sponge, mirror. And here's where everything we've covered comes together. The empath's curse, the narcissist's manipulation, the unbearable suffering, all of it funnels into this single truth. individuation turns sensitivity into sovereignty. And sovereignty is contagious. This is why Jung's vision still matters today, maybe more than ever. Because in an age of collective anxiety, narcissism and projection, empaths are not just sensitive souls, they are potential revolutionaries. Not through force, not through violence, but through the quiet, relentless power of embodied truth. And so the question is no longer why do I feel so much? The real question is what will I do with this power, now that I understand it? Because if you've made it this far, you already know you were never born to heal others by losing yourself. You were born to awaken, and in awakening to awaken the world. If this journey into the hidden psychology of empaths resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because you never know whose awakening might begin with a single story. And if you want more explorations into Jung's psychology, archetypes, and the hidden forces shaping our lives, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Every week we uncover another layer of the unconscious, another piece of the puzzle of who we really are. Your voice matters here. So leave a comment below, tell me your story as an empath, or what part of Jung's insights struck you the most. This channel isn't just about information, it's about creating a community of people who are ready to see, to awaken, and to transform. So don't forget, share, subscribe, and add your voice. Together we're not just watching videos, we're building mirrors strong enough to change the way humanity sees itself.